A lot of expats, obviously they want permanent contracts of employment. It's a foreign country, they kind of want security and stability. Unfortunately, when it comes to South Africa's immigration law, they do not want temporary residents to all permanent contracts. Therefore, for these general workers and the critical skill visa holders as well, they all are limited to a 5-year contract of employment, and it must stipulate the start date specifically. It can't be backdated, for example, and it must stipulate the end date as well. And there are a plethora of undertakings as well, depending on which category you are applying for. For example, you need to, or the company rather, needs to apply to the Department of Home Affairs and say, we undertake hereby that, should it be necessary, we will deport the applicant.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Xpatweb's YouTube channel. My name is Aadil Wadee, one of the senior immigration consultants here at Xpatweb. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague Manfred Barnard, another senior immigration consultant here at Xpatweb. Xpatweb is the largest independent immigration service provider in South Africa, and we specialize in a whole range of immigration needs for any expatriates coming to South Africa, whether it be for corporate companies or in the individual capacity. Today, I thought it best we chat about the general work visa. I think it's one of the most misunderstood visas in South Africa, one which was overlooked for a very long time. But
Mm.
there's obviously been quite a number of changes that has happened. So, Manfred, I think to kick us off, obviously October 2024 is a while ago, but a lot of people still are under the impression that Department of Labor certificates, etc., are needed. So, what has happened with the general work visa?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing about the general work visa, like you said, it was a category that was neglected for years on end due to the fact that it wasn't just Home Affairs you were dealing with. Corporate clients were dealing with the Department of Labor and then also SAQA. Unfortunately, SAQA still remains as they are tricky, but I'll touch on that a bit later. But as you mentioned, 2024 October, this new points-based system was introduced, and it was quite frankly a game changer. General work visa, I would say 1 out of every 10 application we did back then beforehand was a general work visa, simply because you either had to apply for a waiver or get permission from the Department of Labor to hire this individual from abroad. And that was incredibly subjective. You don't know whether the adjudicating official would agree, whether this CFO, for example, who didn't necessarily go to Harvard to get an MBA, but he worked with the company since he was 18 and he's now 50,
Yeah.
that industry knowledge that you appreciate, the person sitting behind the desk at Home Affairs just kind of did not care about. And with this new points-based system, it has made it so much more objective, and employers really started to utilize it or are continuing to utilize it because it sets out the criteria very clearly for everybody involved. And when I say criteria, I'm looking, for example, at work experience that I touched to, whether the applicant is employer in South Africa is admitted to the Trusted Employer Scheme, as well as actually the qualification they hold. There are many others like language proficiency, but those are the crux of the matter, if I can put it like that.
On that points-based system, though,
Mm.
I'm sure a lot of people have noted that there is mention of critical skills or having, if I can call it your title, listed on the critical skills list, which gives you an automatic points for under the points-based system. How does that affect when we're looking at a general work visa versus a critical skills visa? And how does an employer, for example, look at an individual and determine what type of visa would be appropriate for them?
Yeah, so I mean that's a very good question. It's not just the case actually of the title. That's something I must state. If you look at the critical skills list, it's not necessarily to say like corporate general manager, project manager, for example. It's corporate general manager with the criteria of you needing an NQF level 8,
Yeah.
or you need a professional body, or not or, you need a professional body. And that kind of makes the critical skills visa, in my view at least, a bit less attractive now, because that again is a subjective test from another government body where they say, yes, we believe that you meet the criteria for this project manager. And you then open the door when you come to submit the visa application itself, where the adjudicating official at the Department of Home Affairs says, I have looked at this critical skills list and I've looked at what this project manager is supposed to do. I don't necessarily agree with your job title. And I think all HR professionals can tell you my company is not the same as other companies. We all have different job duties for our candidates, so it will never fit squarely into that list. But what we found works so well is that if your immigration team works closely with the team who sets up the contracts and normally the dual taxation agreements as well, you can kind of formulate it from the onset. So everything is aligned from the onset, and the contract itself can pretty much say, for example, this person will take up the head of project management for our department, aligned with
Yeah.
a program or project manager mentioned in the critical skills list.
No, I think that makes sense. I mean, on that distinction as well, and the mention of that sometimes the critical skills isn't actually the preferred choice anymore. I think we do have to touch on the fact of permanent residency, because a lot of individuals who are coming for longer term assignments or accepting offers in South Africa with the view that they want to be here for a very long time, I think permanent residency does come into play. So is there a key difference between critical skills and general work and then that transition itself?
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to general work visas, you need to have been in the country for 5 years on that general work visa or a critical skills visa. It's a toss up. It's important to note, though, that if you were on an intra-company transfer work visa prior to you applying for this general work and getting it, the time you spent on the intra-company transfer work visa, that won't count at all. So it must be on a general work visa or critical skills visa. And with the critical skills, though, the very appealing thing is that you will pretty much immediately be eligible to apply for this permanent residence permit if you have more than 5 years of post qualification experience. And I mean, if you're applying for critical skills, the assumption is pretty much you have 5 years of post qualification experience.
No, definitely. And obviously, I mean, we've seen the introduction of the white paper and proposed changes. I don't think we'll touch on it on this video, obviously a video for another time, but
Mm-hmm.
that might change in the future. So we'll keep a close eye on that, of course.
Yeah.
But another thing I want to touch on is, aside from the 2024 changes to the points-based system, right? As you've mentioned, I think a little bit earlier before, is that another government institution, for example, SAQA, is often involved when it comes to this longer work type of visas. I know there's been another change with regards to obtaining a visa without that SAQA actually being out as yet,
Hmm.
but there is some elements to that. I don't know if you can touch on that for us.
Yeah, so I think the Department of Home Affairs deserves a bit of plaudits in terms of this points-based system, because you can apply for this general work visa for an initial period of 12 months without having to wait for SAQA, which, like I said, well done to Home Affairs for that. It's well deserved. The problem with SAQA is that the processing times we're currently seeing, it used to be about 4 to 6 months to get your SAQA certificate, and I'll touch a bit later on what a SAQA certificate is. But we've seen processing times now exceed 18 months, and it's left applicants in such dire positions. I mean, you're on this visa for 12 months, and the undertaking is for you to get that visa. You will renew it in South Africa once you get your SAQA. And it's coming up now at obviously 18 October 2024. There are people who've applied for SAQA even before the visa application has been submitted, but the SAQA is just not here. And they are now in this position of, I can't continue my employment, but SAQA doesn't want to give me my certificate. And yeah, it's such a tricky situation to be in. And I think I'll just also quickly give a brief background on what a SAQA certificate is. It's pretty much every applicant who studied abroad, so a university based outside of South Africa, and obtained their qualification there, they must get a South African Qualifications Authority verification certificate, which takes your foreign qualification, in this instance, let's say an MBA from Harvard, and benchmarks it to the nearest comparable South African universities. So an MBA from the University of Witwatersrand, for example, is the nearest comparison, and it awards it an NQF level. You would have heard I've touched on that as well now, where an NQF level pretty much says the seniority of a degree. So if it's an NQF level 8, that's typically your honors degree or law degrees. Master's degree, we all know that's a further year of study, and then ultimately your doctorate. So it's a scale of 1 to 10. And for the critical skills, I can say most applicants need to show at least an NQF level 8. That's what makes the general work visa so attractive, again, to people who didn't necessarily go for the education as based route, but on the, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I think Spot on with regards to that. Rock and a hard place currently. I'm pretty sure as well the Department of Home Affairs is aware or is being made aware, but I don't think we've got any publication since then with
No.
the route forward. But yeah, no, I agree. Definitely right direction in terms of trying to avoid that, because on that there's also the trusted employee scheme which does come in, which you've
So,
touched
so
on a little bit with regards to the points-based system. But then on general work visas as well, under the trusted employee scheme, I think a lot of those requirements are actually left off for offers from a trusted employer, which does make it even more appealing
yeah.
to a lot of individuals out there. So definitely some good news, some good direction. It's just trying to put that into practice, which often affects a lot of things.
No, absolutely. And I think the Trusted Employer Scheme, like you touched on, it's such a wonderful initiative from the Department of Home Affairs. And they are thinking of opening the round now as well. So prospective employers, there are a lot of people we found out have a bit of regret not applying for the initial round, because so many employers have found it game changing for them for bringing in talent. I mean, like you touched on now in terms of requirements being waived, but you also need to think about the processing times. I mean, under the Trusted Employer Scheme, it's 20 days from the date of submission. Normal applications, you're looking at 8 to 10 weeks at the very least, if you're lucky. So it's massive, massive. And I think as well, just on that points-based system, so applicants need 100 points to qualify under it. And I mean, on your qualifications, for example, let's say you have an honors degree, so you have 30 points there. That's an NQF8. That's 30 points. And you have an offer of employment, so the remuneration amount is what they actually mean. So if your gross package exceeds 976,000 ZAR per annum gross, then you get 50 points, so we're already on 80 points. Now, normally applicants then start fledgling a bit, because it's now down to the experience and language proficiency, which a lot of them can get well above, and it's very easy for them. So, I mean, you just need to be proficient in one of South Africa's official languages, and you need about 5 years or 10 years of experience, and then you're looking at a sliding scale of about 20 points. But if you're a trusted employer, those applicants get 30 points automatically. It's no questions asked, you have it. And I mean, just to get 70 points based off that criteria, it's a walk in the park for most professionals that you want to bring in abroad. And yeah, it really is such a big game changer for every mobility professional.
Of course. And I think on that as well, with regards to requirements, it's something mobility professionals often lose sleep over, because requirements do vary from visa to visa, but they vary so slightly that it's often very difficult for them to pick up. I think on the general work visa itself, there's a few specific requirements that do have to form part of the application back. And one, I'll just mention the word permanent contract, which seems to float around quite often when it comes to trying to bring someone in. I don't know if you want to just touch on the requirements and those key ones, which are probably quite important.
Yeah, so the key requirements is, and a lot of expats, obviously they want permanent contracts of employment. It's a foreign country, they kind of want security and stability. Unfortunately, when it comes to South Africa's immigration law, they do not want temporary residents to all permanent contracts. Therefore, for these general workers and the critical skill visa holders as well, they all are limited to a 5-year contract of employment, and it must stipulate the start date specifically. It can't be backdated, for example, and it must stipulate the end date as well. And there are a plethora of undertakings as well, depending on which category you are applying for. For example, you need to, or the company rather, needs to apply to the Department of Home Affairs and say, we undertake hereby that should it be necessary, we will deport the applicant, or that if the applicant, for example, gets a promotion from chief executive officer to vice president, then he or she will apply for a change of conditions of the visa. So you can always stay there. And yeah, it is a little snafu, if I can put it like that, where a lot of employers have fallen into the trap. And but it's, again, it's Home Affairs sometimes not publishing this information publicly, and you kind of need an industry expert to partner with you on this journey, because it's a different country, South Africa. We have our requirements, and if you have the correct partner, it's a very good system.
I agree. Thank you, Manfred. I think we leave it at that for today.
Yeah.
I think general outlook from us at Xpatweb is that the Department of Home Affairs is obviously going in the right direction. We've seen it since COVID has hit the world, unfortunately. Since then, we have been moving in a certain direction, and it does seem to be the right one. There's obviously been quite a bit of changes with regards to clearing backlogs, changes in immigration itself. Now, with touch on the white paper itself, it looks as if they want to make this for the better. I mean, we know global mobility is probably the best driving force for the economy because bringing in skilled workers is obviously something which only will help us become a better country. And before, with just the critical skills work visa as the only viable option, it was always super difficult. So the introduction of the points-based system and the changes to having the general work visa be a little bit easier to acquire is obviously very welcome. So definitely, I think that's it from us for today. But hopefully, we'll chat real soon again.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.